Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to talk about some ways that you can help your learners pass the NHA certification exam. We are here to kind of talk about some of those biggest questions, those big needs, but we wanted you to know that at NHA, we are fully invested in the success for you and your students. We're here to help ensure that all learners, no matter their background or needs, feel confident and empowered to challenge their certification exam at the end of the year or end of your program. We know that confidence is a large part of that process. So today's goals are to ensure that you have everything you need to help encourage them and excel. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment and get to know who we have with us here today. So I'm going to open up a poll. You should see a question posting on your screen. If you could select the role or title with your institution that most aligns with what your job is, this just kind of gives us a little bit of information about you and where you're coming from. So take just a quick minute. Wonderful. I love seeing this kind of data show up in real time. It's always a lot of fun. You can post in the chat box as well. Thank you, Christine. Feel free. We're just kind of getting a little bit of information gathered about who we have with us today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll up here. So you can see it looks like the bulk of you are either a program director or coordinator, but majority are actually classroom educators working directly with those learners, which is great. That is really kind of who the target audience is for today's session and the information we're going to share. So thank you all so much for that. Let's take a moment to review kind of a little bit more about NHA and what we offer. I'm sure you're aware that NHA does provide frontline healthcare worker certifications and learning resources for every step of the journey. We have 8 nationally accredited certifications and aligned study materials, as well as additional educational tools that address didactic content, reporting, analytics, and soft skills developers. 5 of our 8 certifications fall within the practitioner side of frontline healthcare, including medical assistant, phlebotomist, pharmacy technician, EKG, and patient care technician. There are also 3 certifications in a more administrative capacity, which include billing and coding, medical administrative assistant, and e-health records. In addition, NHA develops comprehensive learning tools around key objectives for the healthcare professions that we serve. But today's session is directed towards you, again, as an educator. We're going to focus primarily on those exam-ready resources for you as well as for your learners. Now, NHA has been working on some full program maps to help implement the suite of possible resources for you, no matter which profession you're teaching towards. But today, again, we are going to focus just on the materials aiming towards this section of exam day and certification. This is a simplified timeline, and we're going to use this sort of as our roadmap for today. So you'll see this image kind of come across several different times. And we're going to use it through each step of what we'll outline on best practices to help students pass the NHA exam. But ultimately, we know that the building blocks of your student success include you as their instructors. You are the vital piece of this process. Your involvement, encouragement, can really shape their ability to achieve the goal of earning their industry certifications. So as we go through our steps, we'll be outlining when and how you can address these processes, which truly make all the difference. So the first thing that you can do to help your students have a successful exam experience is for you to start planning early. We know that getting a head start is always a good idea. And with that in mind, prior to the start of term, typically, or if you can, check to be sure everything is ready to go. If you are providing the NHA exam prep materials to your students, check in with your NHA account under an inventory feature to ensure that you have all the materials and resources loaded. If not, connect with your NHA contact to finalize or approve your order or request. When everything is set up, this is the right time to create your NHA course. Take some time to review the additional materials that NHA has around this process with how-to PDFs or video guides through your administrative login. Remember to fill out that instructor course form that we're going to post at the end. We can try to kind of be even more effective to bring these to you when you need them. If you need or want any refresher training on best practices like we're doing for today, or materials or reporting, if you're using a new resource this year, this is the right time to get something scheduled through your NHA contact with one of this team, the client experience partners, which I'm privileged to be a part of. Now let's see what these steps actually look like. To start, you'll need to log in to your administrative account with NHA at nhanow.com. If you don't have a login or don't know if you have one, again, that contact form that we'll be sending out, that's the best way to get that information as soon as possible. You can also put information in the Q&A. We can always get you contacted. Once you've logged in, select the inventory option on the left-hand side of your page. This will let you confirm what you already have in your institution account. This is what has not yet been provided to students. If what you see here isn't sufficient for your cohort, then that's when you want to follow the proper school steps to connect with your NHA representative to get more added. This is best to do before the program begins, definitely before you add any learners to your NHA course. This ensures that everything is set for classes to start. To create a course to then implement the NHA exam materials, you can now select the courses feature in your account. Before creating any new course, now is the time to archive any old or completed courses from the previous term. To do this, open up the existing course details and choose to archive the course at the top. Now, this will not revoke access from those candidates who studied in the previous term. It will, however, turn off the ability to add new candidates or learners to that course. This helps to prevent confusion and also keep your reporting really clean. So once that's done, select the new course feature from that same space within your courses field. Now you can begin to create your NHA course, selecting the materials you want to provide access to, and filling in any appropriate information, setting boundaries or parameters you may want to implement this content. The other part of preparing ahead is making sure that you are ready to implement any necessary steps for your program. So this may include reviewing the additional learning tools and resources in the NHA website, including how to document walkthroughs and videos for the entire journey for both you and your students. Look over the candidate facing videos to see what it looks like from their perspective. And if you still would like some additional training, or again, if you're rolling out a new product and you haven't contacted anyone to kind of get that update, please schedule something with your NHA representative through our team, and one of us will follow up with you as soon as we can. Okay, so now that you are ready to go, the next step is to get your students ready by getting them set up in their NHA accounts. Based off of the data NHA has been able to collect across the last several years, the research suggests that not only are those students who start their journey with NHA earlier more confident in their readiness, but also have a higher likelihood to take the NHA exam. We see that those students who are given this kind of confidence again have a higher probability of passing in their first attempt. Inviting your students to create their NHA accounts as early in the program as possible, even if you're not yet starting their exam preparation, is helpful. They can already begin to familiarize themselves with the platform, the tools, and resources available to them. Once they're in, NHA will be sending them additional information, emails, suggestions, encouragement, opportunities to attend webinars so that they are mentally prepared for the road ahead. So as soon as possible, again, have your students set up those logins, but there are a couple of best practices here. We do recommend that their NHA login be an email address they check frequently and long term, not just while they're enrolled in your program. One that they continue to check. Think about where would they like a password reset email to go, or what email address will you have on your resume? This is a great time to begin a conversation with them on digital professionalism. Maybe even use setting up a professional online presence, an email, if possible, a LinkedIn account would be a great start. This would also include their login to the NHA website. They also should take note of the password that they use here. No one wants to be stuck in an exam room and unable to start due to a forgotten password. The other best practice is to confirm that the name that they select or put into their account is their legal name, whatever is on their government issued photo ID. This is what will be used on exam day to verify their identity. And if the account name doesn't match, then they may not be able to test. You can't set up those accounts for them, but you can monitor this to be sure everything follows these best practices. So, email address, it's long term, and legal first and last name. Now, if you invite your students to create their own accounts early in the semester or term prior to accessing course content, there's an invitation feature directly on your NHA account. This is a best practice recommendation. Again, so they can begin these steps. When it's time, you can also add them directly to your course roster, providing them some of that inventory that we already checked. We recommend starting them in their learning content as early as is realistic in your program. It helps to establish their growth mindset that they can do this and can promote a higher dedication to the belief that they have the ability and will be able to see this through, tying in what they're learning as they're learning it. That's a best practice. In fact, a survey of over 6,000 recent NHA exam candidates stated that they wished they had studied with NHA's exam prep materials earlier and more frequently than they did prior to sitting for the exam. This speaks to their level of confidence in the exam format and content, which leads us to step 3, implementing the NHA exam preparation resources into your program. We highly recommend providing access to the NHA materials as early as you can and actively incorporate them as much as possible to help with student engagement. This step includes 3 main components: implementing the NHA study guide and quizzes, practice tests and review resources, and using the detailed reporting tools. So I'm going to launch another poll here just out of curiosity. I want to find out. Here's another question up there. If you're using the NHA study materials in your classroom or plan to use it, so go ahead and select the item that kind of fits the closest with where you are at this time. Take just a minute. Excellent. Thank you all so much. This is a lot of fun. I always love seeing this reporting. And so you got almost everybody, not quite. If anybody else wants to join in, please go ahead and select the one that fits you best. And I'm going to go ahead and close that poll down. So it looks like the majority are either already using it or plan to use it, which is great. Again, we see a lot of success when you're implementing these. And the next kind of few minutes are really going to be focused on this content specifically. So sorry, I should share that. So most everybody is using it or plan to use it. So that's great. Thank you again so much, everybody. So, some background on the NHA materials and best practices is that over the last decade or so, we've been able to award over 1 million certifications across the country. NHA can use that data and content from those processes to help identify best practices on implementation. We're able to evaluate candidate behavior in those tools compared to outcomes on their certification exams. And we can provide some pretty strong analytics to assist you with that implementation. NHA has seen that across the country, those who use the certification preparation tools and best practices, there it is, when studying, along with your program course content, they have a much higher possibility of passing the exam in their first attempt. So moving through step 3, we do highly recommend providing access to the NHA materials as early as you can, aligning the student learning with the NHA exam test plan. This begins with the online study guide and quizzes that you can embed into your academic program. Use the module quizzes to evaluate candidate readiness and mastery at the topic level. These follow the test outline, and each quiz can provide clarity on how your students are mastering those topics as they learn them. This also gives your students insight into the NHA process how we word questions and answers, and can already begin to instill confidence in their ability to pass the NHA exam. Engagement in learning is not a new idea to NHA or education in general. And involving several different techniques and practices in your educational program can really help not only with involvement, but a higher feeling of satisfaction in the learning process. All of these items listed here were identified by a great article from Inside Higher Ed as strategies that, when used, promote those feelings of confidence. With just a little bit of creativity in your program development, NHA's exam prep materials can accomplish almost every line item from this list. So let's take a quick look at what those study guides and quizzes really contain. So all of the study guides are aligned directly to the NHA test plans and include some key components. Depending on the certification type, it can look a little bit different, but there are audio readers, quizzes, personal checkpoints, detailed reporting on time spent and outcomes. All assessments or questions provide rationales to students to understand as they answer them more about how we will word questions and see some of the normatives behind the answers. Different certifications may provide case studies, games, flashcards, or even professionalism videos or EMR challenges. On that, NHA recently launched a flashcard app to help further. So once your students have access to the NHA materials, if flashcards are included, they have access to any of the flashcards that are they from that study material in a mobile app. You can easily download this for Android or Apple. There are how-tos on the NHA website that walk your students through what to do depending on the device at hand. Now, you as an administrator have complimentary access to view all the materials you're providing to your learners through a preview feature in your NHA course details. From here, you can select any module or quiz when applicable to review it yourself. The quizzes tied to each section are designed to look and feel just like the online exam, but are focused on just one core competency. So you and your students can see that level of mastery. As I mentioned, these questions won't just tell students if they are wrong or right, but will also provide the content information needed to know and to understand why each choice is right or wrong, to help with that familiarity. Now, we don't really recommend that they take these quizzes over and over again, but they do have unlimited access. We recommend that they take them and then use the information to study more before moving into the next module. You can take them again. We will tell you if they do, but because they're provided these rationales, it's not really in their best interest to take them repeatedly. You will also have certification specific implementation guides available to you. These outline for you the content, implementation suggestions, even the average time it takes for your students to navigate through the materials. You can see here just 4 of our 8 certifications and the time we would suggest an average candidate take to work through them. It does vary depending on the certification. So this is an example of how we outline not only per certification, but also per module to help with the implementation for your students. Now, the next portion of step 3 are the practice tests and review resources. The study material package includes a series of practice tests designed to look and feel just like the exam. They follow the full test plan, which is why implementing these too soon in the learning cycle may not be in their best interest. Unlike the module quizzes, these do have a limit on the attempts available. Each test also comes with something called the NHA Focused Review, which is a personalized study tool derived from that practice test attempt to help candidates as they navigate through them. Now, when we monitor student behaviors with practice assessments, these really should be used after the study guide has been completed. This is the same for all of our exam prep except currently the billing and coding exam. So for the CBCS, they have a baseline assessment to be used prior to the study guide. At present, that is the only one of our products that really recommends that for implementation. But either way, NHA has seen that the first practice exam attempt should be as close to a real exam experience as you can create. Some of our materials will automatically do this, but you can also do this manually. After that first test, use the reporting and data to help define your remediation plan for your students and move through the next few practice tests. Leveraging the unique focused review tool provided to your students tied to each practice test to further their study. And that fourth exam, again, would be in that other real exam environment as possible. This not only provides your students with real world experiences of the actual exam, but helps to develop their skills related to test taking and test anxiety. We've seen that students who have at least 2 practice tests in as close to a real exam experience as possible have a higher probability of success on their NHA exams. The practice test, as I mentioned, will look and feel like the actual exam, no matter which certification. They will have at least 3 different test versions, which cycle through to a total of 6 attempts. Now, again, just because they get a bunch of tries doesn't mean they should take them all right away to memorize questions. These are designed to help prepare and study for the test. Each of those attempts follows the full test blueprint, but students shouldn't expect that these exact questions will be on the certification test. They're designed to follow the test plan for scored questions, provide feedback, reporting, additional tools to help them study. And you have the power as the instructor to turn on or off instant feedback rationales to help as they prepare. This is what you do for that first and fourth attempt, for example, to give them that mock exam experience. Even if possible, get them in the testing center or computer lab. Require a time limit. It's not really important that they take all 6 assessments, but that they do the study in between. So one of the ways we can help with that is leveraging that focused review. So after each practice assessment or quiz attempt, students will receive a personalized score showing outcomes in each main area. Now, we're not going to tell them what question they missed on this report, but instead what competencies to work on. This is to be sure they go back and study on areas they need to continue to develop rather than just memorize questions. After their practice tests, they can immediately launch their review. This review helps to study what may still need some help, not what they're already comfortable with, what they haven't quite mastered yet. They can come back to this at any time. We do recommend that they spend time in this review as well as any additional course content before taking their next practice test. Now, this is a different study tool specific to just that one practice test attempt to help them focus further on those areas that they may still be struggling in. Now, this resource is printable, it is filterable, and it helps to make sure that they are doing more study. We know the best way to improve their score is by challenging themselves to continue to work on that material. Now, much of implementation through the learning process includes understanding the reports and analytics available to you and to your students through these materials. So from the very first moment, the very first student accesses study content, detailed reports begin to load. They give you and your students visibility to content accessed, time spent, quizzes completed, practice test outcomes. Students have their own personalized reporting they can access directly from the portal. Once they've started their materials, they select whichever report that they want to access. They can view that at the module level or at the practice test level. And then they're taken to a personalized overview of what they've completed, how long they've spent, any scores they've received. Practice test reports begin with detailed information on their overall score, again, time spent, and then moves into an overview of the main core areas. This is the outline from the test plan, and they can see how they did in each primary domain. Scrolling down will show them, oops, I missed it. We'll show them all of the topics that they missed at least one question on as a review for study. Your students in these tools have a personalized progress tracker also. So this is specifically for CCMA, let's see, phlebotomy, patient care tech, and pharmacy tech. So their progress tracker will invite them to an interactive reporting tool to help monitor best practices and suggestions on what to do, where to go. They provide answers to the questions of what have I completed? What should I do next? How am I doing in my study? Which content areas am I struggling in? It also provides direct links to the focused review, which we will monitor how much time they spend there. And don't forget that there are how-to resources for all of this. Now, I want to give you some information as to how doable I truly believe this is. Here's a snapshot of a school that I have personally worked with previously, and each one of these bar graphs represents a different college semester. The first semester of this graph is when the school was using our NHA exam, but was not leveraging any of the prep materials. This had been their normal testing outcome for a couple of semesters. So they reached out and asked, what can they do to help their students? So they started providing the exam prep materials, but didn't follow true implementation practices, simply giving the materials to them and telling them to go and study. Well, that next semester, they had a 55% pass rate, not much improvement, and it wasn't really the outcome they wanted. So then we worked together with the instructors to highlight best practices, truly embedding the materials into requirements and coursework and grades. And the instructors initiated timelines and implemented those best practices. And you can see this third semester, they obtained a 92% pass rate, with those who followed best practices all passing in their first attempt. Over the course of this period, they increased their test rate 3 times over. And here we see that it not only implementing does it increase pass rate, but confidence to even try and sit for the exam, which we see again and again. That when students feel it's possible they can succeed, not only do they reach further, but your success rate is also higher. Some more information on that. Actually, we did that recent survey I mentioned earlier. It revealed some of the most common themes around the biggest hurdles that students felt related to their NHA exam. So I'm gonna launch a quick poll here. I'm curious. So what do you think of those listed? And I'm gonna relist them here. What do you think was the biggest one, the most common issue reported across these different reported scenarios? Go ahead and read through them. Select the one that you think is most applicable. Take your time, read through them. Okay, we're almost there. Got about half of you. Anybody else want to put their lot in there? Okay, I'm going to close this up here in just a second. So if you want to respond, go ahead and do it. And don't worry, I'll tell you if you were right or wrong. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that. Awesome. All right. So thank you guys. So for those of you who selected test anxiety, you were right. We know that this is an issue and we know it can be addressed through preparation. It's one of the many reasons why it's a best practice, again, to get your students started as soon as possible so we can continue to help them as they progress. Here are just some of the hundreds of comments from that survey that focused on uncertainty, not just around general anxiety, but not knowing if they're prepared. Have they learned all the things they need? Even concern about making it through a timed exam. So providing the exam test plans, these resources, doing those mock exams, they have shown to make a real positive impact. So the implementation involvement from you can really help student outcomes for their certification exam. To assist you with this, step 4 is ensuring that you have checked everything off for exam day itself. Timelines for reminders, setting exam dates, and when to ensure your students are ready. We know each program is different with varying lengths and tempos, so please know these timelines are flexible, though a few are really important. We also intend to help with all of this with walkthroughs and guides, additional training as needed. So if you need any of that, remember to fill out that instructor form at the end of our session today. You'll also be put into that raffle, right? So we're going to take the major players on our checklist one at a time, starting with somewhere near when you choose to implement those practice tests, or in a typical kind of semester, at least 30 days prior to your desired exam date. We'd recommend you start with this process. So around the time is when, if you're testing at your location, at your campus, we'd suggest you go ahead and open your scheduled exam date through the NHA website. If you're using prepaid exam codes for your students, ensure you connect with your NHA representative to make sure that you have those set up for those slated to be eligible to test. This is also the right time to ensure that anyone who may qualify for testing accommodations with the necessary documentation, IEP forms, 504s, for example, they would need to submit that request form for their exam day at this time. They have to have their application to the test completed prior to submitting that request. So check in with them here to be sure it gets reviewed in time. Proctors on exam day do not have the authority to approve accommodations, so they must be completed in advance. To ensure everything is ready for exam day, this is also when we'd suggest all students begin to submit their exam applications. Either way, all applications must be completed prior to the application deadline for that test, which is 1 week prior to test day. Now, you can monitor these through your administrative login in the NHA portal. In fact, we recommend you keep an eye on who's done that to ensure that everyone who should has finished this step. And we'll kind of walk through that here in a minute. In that approximate 2-week window prior to the exam, students should be submitting or have already completed their applications, which you should be monitoring through your administrative login to ensure there's no surprises on your roster. Check in with any candidates with that additional accommodation request if they need a secondary exam date scheduled or additional documentation to submit. This needs to happen right away. Confirm with the testing center or proctor that they are ready. If they need additional assistance to be prepared for the test to run, we should find that out now. Remember, you can't proctor your own students, so you want to be sure someone is set up who can. For any offsite or third-party testing, this is the time when you want to be sure that those exams are scheduled and have all the resources your learners need for that testing method. During the final week prior to the test is when NHA would suggest you implement that last practice test, providing students a real exam experience, solidifying their confidence. You may receive an email to approve an exam roster. For any students testing offsite, that might not happen, but you should be monitoring their rosters at this time as well, confirming the applications and tests are all ready to go. Provide any final reminders to your students, including anyone again with an accommodation. Review with them the test plan, the exam location, date, time, suggestions to plan ahead for parking and traffic. This is also when you should remind your students to check their logins and passwords. They will be on a different device than they've been studying on, and it won't have any saved logins. It's not always possible to reset a password during an exam, so this is the right time to remind them to have that all set up. And then finally, we come to exam day, where your students can become NHA certified. Now, that readiness checklist, which that was a kind of a visual aid for, exists in our website under our resources. But the idea of monitoring your applications, exam dates, rosters, that's great. The next step is understanding how to do that to be sure you're actively keeping watch. One of the most common and most frustrating scenarios is when on test day, emotions and anxiety are already high for something to go wrong that could have been avoided. So let's take a look at how to be sure that it's a successful day. So when scheduling your exams, always check your active test dates first, which you can do through the upcoming exams button on your NHA portal. This is for testing on site. From this link, you can view any upcoming tests in the next 30 to 90 days. In this example, you can see exams that are open. If your test date is not already listed here, then you know you won't be duplicating anything to add one. The exam status is also important. As you can see here, there are some still open for registration. The application deadline, as I mentioned, is the last day that students can apply for the exam, technically 8 days prior to the test date, so it closes overnight, 1 week before the test. It is important that your students are on the exam roster before that date. NHA will automatically finalize the exam 3 business days before the test. So knowing this date, ensuring your students are registered beforehand is key to a smooth exam experience. That left-hand navigation bar is where you can access all the information you need to prevent any surprises on that exam roster. I mentioned monitoring their applications. So you would select this View Applications feature. And here you'd be able to see both off-site or on-site applications, their exam statuses, even completion dates based off of whatever filters you set. You can also download this into an Excel spreadsheet for easier filtering and editing. The week before the test we mentioned is when you may receive notification of the exam roster to approve for any on-site exams. Please follow up with your internal process to be sure you know who should be approving those rosters. Rostering's a little bit different for those testing offsite, but the steps to review are the same. You will want to go to your roster when you receive that notification, confirm who's eligible to test. From here, you select your test date and you approve or reject those learners. You can see those who are testing through NHA's third-party testing agency or tied to any of your scheduled exam dates. Remember to be sure to do this as soon as you can to ensure that this is complete 3 business days before the exam. Open the exam date you need, and you'll be able to select on the left-hand side the candidates individually. This will activate the option then to approve or reject. It's important, again, to be sure to do this as soon as you can before we do it for you. Now, once that's done, no changes can be made to invoices and no more students can be added to the test. So that's why we were monitoring this well in advance. Take note that the default setting for on-site testing will be those in pending approval status. So if you don't see your student here, double check that filter in the upper right-hand corner. The default for off-site exams is for all students. So to see just those waiting approval, update your filter. Okay, so the final step is to be sure you know where to go for all of your resources. And this starts with understanding that exam test plan. So the test plan is the blueprint or the outline of the exam itself. We recommend you provide this to your students, but also use it for yourself as a checklist for readiness or for content. It's important that you understand how your students will be scored because they're going to ask you, how is this going to work? The practice tests give you and your students a straight accuracy percentage across the exam competencies, but the certification test evaluates each question across a scaled score, which we're going to review here. Exams are developed after a full job task analysis, which includes subject matter experts, industry practitioners, several rounds of committee evaluation. So this, along with our governing board and meeting accreditation standards, help us to create the test plans and test questions. Now, all of these plans are listed on the website, ready for anyone to view. They are tied to each specific certification. Once an exam is released, after it's been developed, our psychometrician team, love that word, psychometrics, they process those questions and evaluate them. Every candidate who tests follows the same blueprint. It's the materials that we use for all of our study content. Scored items on the exam outline a series of competencies and tasks found on the exam itself. Every student who challenges this test will follow this test plan, but they will not all have the same questions. So to fairly score each individual candidate across a potential variety of questions, every one of them has been evaluated across a series of layers, which include how hard is this question? How often in your role will you be asked to do this thing? Even how important is it you get it right the first time? Now, these are just some of the layers that are used to establish that cut scaled score. So to provide that fair assessment, any exam has a maximum score range of 500. No matter what questions you receive as a candidate, you have the potential to earn 500 points. There will be questions on the test we don't score, and learners will want to be sure to answer all questions to the best of their ability because they won't know which ones those are. The non-scored questions are not included in the test plan outline. Only scored questions are identified and count towards their overall score. The minimum passing score for any of the tests is 390 or higher. So if you have a learner who earns like a 389, for example, that doesn't necessarily mean they missed one question. They didn't quite make the minimum cut score. These aren't broken down into standard measures of getting an A, a B, or a C grade on a percentage, but rather evaluate each learner uniquely across those weighted questions. As a side note, we find that certain benchmarks may often actually discourage students from testing. Milestones that may be set for students to hit, scores throughout the semester, they may not be realistic for every candidate and actually discourage them from even trying in the first place. Our goal is that any learner in your class has the potential to reach their goal and earn their industry credential. So we'd recommend, rather than using a quiz or test score as a requirement, focus more on the time in learning, using reports and assessments to monitor candidate growth over that journey, which is where the implementation guides can really help. And we talked about those earlier. You are monitoring your students in a unique and special group, being able to know them and observe their own individual growth. Practice tests provide you clear and specific percentages to help understand how they are doing in this group. NHA certification scores are designed to compare your learners across a larger group, the entire country. So the cut scores don't reflect the same kind of scoring the practice tests do. We're gauging readiness to move into these roles using scaled scores to help us define the ability to step into the field and showcase their skills work day one. Benchmarks on practice tests won't necessarily reflect that same level of readiness, again, due to the differences in the scoring. Okay, one last bonus tip and we'll get to some Q&A. Encouragement. As you and your students work through your educational timeline, your involvement in their process through consistent encouragement is vital. For so many of your students, this is the first time they've done anything like this, and they may not fully believe they can. As I mentioned earlier, setting benchmarks may be helpful for progression, but we've seen that those aren't necessarily always in their best interest. So our goal is any student in your class has their potential to earn their industry certification and become certified. Now, we know that your students aren't the only ones that are working really hard. And I wanted to take a minute just to make sure you know how thankful we are for you. I want to personally thank you for all that you're doing. I know that you're working crazy hours, crazy hard, all kinds of things are happening. And we just want you to know that we are here to help with this process. NHA is continuing the development of a full learning track. And we currently have program resources that range from didactic learning and med-term, A&P, soft skills, clinical skills, pharmacy technician, didactic features. I mean, we've got resources for everything. All of these can be packaged together or used independently to help with this process from start to finish. Now, I know we just went through a heap of information. As we develop more of these webinars, what would you like to learn more about? We want to make sure we're providing these to you in real time. So please take just a quick minute and mark out. You can select as many of these as you like. What are the things that would be most helpful for you? Now, after we get into this, we are going to take a look at some Q&A. We have about 15 minutes left on our session today to talk through questions that have populated. We have also been recording this session, so we will be sending that recording out to anyone who registered for today. I'm just going to give you guys an opportunity to fill this out so that we can be sure we kind of see where you're at. For anyone really interested in administrative assisting tools, please know we actually have a webinar tomorrow around a brand new learning resource that we're launching. So please go out on our website and register for that because it's really exciting. So anyone interested in administrative assistant, medical assistant suite, tomorrow's a really great informative webinar that we can capture for you. All right, perfect. Thank you guys so much for that. I really appreciate that. So again, we've been recording. We'll be sending this out to you. We're going to just outline some of the resources that we have from our self-guided how-to documents, which you can access directly from our website. There's a direct link as you scroll down where we have a list of all of our how-to tools right there for you. We also have, of course, our client care team. It's our customer service team, real people living here in the United States, incredible, incredible people here to help. They don't work 24-hour, but they are extended hour and are there to help answer the live chat or 800 number. And then, of course, your immediate contact here at NHA. And if you don't know who that is, that's where the survey form we're going to post here in just a second. Fill that out so we can get them connected with you as soon as possible. All right, so we're going to be posting in the chat box right now. There's going to be 2 links. One of them is a survey on today's session, which is going to be put you into a raffle to win a $50 gift card. Sorry, $50 gift card. And then the second one, as listed here, thank you, Lauren, is that survey form. What else do you want to learn about? What do you want follow up with? Do you know who your NHA contact is? We want to make sure that you get that right away. So let's get into some questions. What do we have out there?
Hi, Laura, this is Mary. Earlier on in the webinar, there was a question that if students get access, because you know how we want them to have access to their practice materials as soon as possible to get used to our format, what is it that they can do to keep them from blowing through all of their practice tests up front and not using that pacing that we want them to use?
You cut out there, Mary, but I think I'm tracking with you on what you're talking about. So I'm going to see if I can pull up where that was in that course creation. Let's see here. Invitation. Nope. Okay. Sorry. I'm going back into the, so when you're building your course out, when we have that set up, and I'm trying to find where I covered that. Nope, that's practice test. So it's okay. We're gonna, so when you have the opportunity to build your course, which we can do a little live demo of what that really looks like here if you like, you have the opportunity to set some boundaries around the practice test availability. You can even set not available until, or you have to wait so many days in between. Part of best practices is establishing that. You can do the same thing with each individual module of the study guide. You can turn them on and off. You can really temper their access to that material, and you have complete control over setting that up. So it's a part of how the system works to set it up that way. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes. Another question was, how do I invite my students to my course?
Great question. So remember we looked at the course roster. So when you have that course built and you've confirmed that your inventory is available, right? That's kind of a key thing there. Course built, inventory available. You have the ability to invite them to the course roster. And you know what? I'm going to actually go in so I'm going to see if I can't pull a live like a demonstration for us to look at. So you can invite them directly. Students can also request enrollment to a course if they already have their NHA account set up. So we talked about getting them kind of set up early, but you don't necessarily need to invite them right away to the course material. So how do I do that? All right, so I'm just going to take you to show you a little bit. When you have those courses set up, I've checked my inventory, I've created my course, I've set my boundaries on that material, and then I have my course roster. This is where I can invite them or I can approve enrollment depending on the scenario at hand. So here we see we've got those currently enrolled. I can see those who have requested enrollment or anyone I have invited, which I can do right from this screen. So it's a really simple process, and we have how-to documents for every single step of that journey. Does that answer that question, Mary?
Yes, it does.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I know there's a question in the chat about times on the practice test. Can we change them or do we need help? That's a really great question. Right now, you get to set up those course boundaries for practice tests at the time of course creation. We are working on making this something you can manipulate on the other side. But right now, what we recommend is when you set up that boundary, I'm just going to show you here, creating a course, you set up your timeline. I'm going to turn on my material, and then I can say, I want this to become available on whatever date that is. I want to prohibit how frequently they can take those practice tests. But once this course has been created, this date is solid without help from an NHA representative. So we would recommend that this be the earliest you might want to. Just because it becomes available doesn't mean they have to take it. So set that up with a little bit of flexibility. If we do need to change it, your NHA representative can do that, but try to give yourself a little bit of bubble, right, for that kind of content. If you don't set any boundaries, if you leave these blank, for example, just going to take that out, well, then your learners would have direct and immediate access if they choose to. to take those practice tests. Some programs do that intentionally, and that's okay. The best is that you instruct them when you want them to do it and try to encourage them to adhere to your instructions. And that's kind of the key there. So if you leave that blank, you just create your course. There aren't any supplemental boundaries set. It just depends on what you want and what makes the most sense for your program. It's great questions.
Okay, and since we're on those practice tests, if a student doesn't click on the review button right after testing, can they come back to that focus review later?
They can. They have unlimited access to that focused review, to their report, to see how well they did in that practice test. Yes, they can review that at any time. That's a great question.
Okay, and this has to do with the NHA mobile app.
Okay.
Is access to the app included when we purchase the bundles from NHA?
Excellent question. So the app is for your learners, right? So I want to make that really clear. There's not an app as an instructor at this time. You have access to all of the course content from that preview feature within the courses. The app is there for any of the tools that we provide that have flashcards. Not every tool that we have has flashcards. It's something to keep in mind. But the app is there for your learners. And what it will do is filter any of the flashcards they have access to into that app where they can do that separately. And for any of those tools that we mentioned earlier that have that kind of second review resource, so pharmacy tech, patient care tech, phlebotomy, MA, we'll actually be able to let you know how much time they're spending in the flashcard app separate from how much time they're spending in their study guide. It's coming for the others as well. We just don't have it quite yet. So does that help, Mary?
Yes. And do we have a guideline as to how much time daily students should be using their NHA prep materials?
That's a really cool question. Not daily, no, because every program is different. Those guidelines, and if we go back up and show you where you can find your implementation guide. So we're going to go into that how-to space we mentioned right there at the end. This is where all of your how-tos are. That exam ready checklist I mentioned, that's what we were using all day today, but the implementation guides are right here. And you can see, so I'm going to just open up the MA implementation guide, just it's at the top. This is your roadmap, as we mentioned, to those study materials, best practices for implementation. And then the timestamp is more about time in that layer of learning. So some programs are a year long, some are 6 months, some are 6 weeks. So we can't really define each day at this point because it's different for every program, but we're giving you a guideline. Does this mean that every learner needs 95 minutes in healthcare systems and settings? No, not really. Some might need more, some might need less, but it gives you that benchmark of time in study that we would suggest based off of the data we've collected so far.
Okay, that's all the questions that I have. Do any of the other CX team partners have any questions that I missed?
I saw one just posted in the chat box. What a great question. So NHA is currently partnering with the American Council on Education, and several of our certifications have the opportunity, and let's see, where is that under ACE credit? There it is, ACE credit. So the American Council on Education, through a program called Credly, where students who earn, or candidates who earn certain certifications, have the ability for transferable college credit. We are applying for that for our other learning tools. We have not yet gotten that confirmed, but it is something we're actively working towards. So this is applicable right now for any learner who's taken these and earned these certifications. They do have transferable college credit through Credly. So great question. You cannot change the number of attempts for quizzes at this time. We're working on that, but it's not yet something we can do here. So sorry about that, Kimberly. And we just got a question, can we change the quiz attempts? No, but we will tell you how many times they do it. Your reporting will show, and you'll be able to say, you have complete power to say, I'm only going to accept your first quiz score as your grade. And so if you take that too soon, too bad. Like that's up to you and kind of how you want to monitor your students. Some programs do actually require that they take them multiple times. Some require they take them at the beginning and at the end. So we can't really limit those at this time, but we're looking to see if that's something we can implement in the future. So great questions. We're right up on the hour. I'm going to go ahead and cancel and turn off the recording, but I do want to say real quick to everybody, thank you so much for being here. Thank you from all of us here at NHA. We're so proud to be a part of this journey, and we're going to stick on, I think, for a couple more minutes and see if we can answer some more questions, but please expect some information here. If we could post those survey links real quick one more time for anybody else. Thank you so much for being here today.